Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Mindful Marathon Conversations. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Quirk. I am a pediatrician and a run coach and founder of Mindful Marathon, where I help make running easy and fun for busy professionals. And today I have a very special guest with me. I have with me Dr. Joanna Cranston. She is a general surgeon turned artist, and she is a veteran of the US Army. And we are going to talk about running and her art and all of the things. So welcome to the show, Dr. Joanna.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
So you have been a runner since childhood. Can you tell us a little bit about how you started running and how running has been a part of your life through the years?
Yeah, that's right. I have been running almost as long as I can remember. My dad was a runner, and so I have two siblings, and he always tried to encourage us to go with him when he would go for a run after work. So he would we could ride our bikes with him, and he would pay us a quarter, but if we ran, he would pay us 50 cents. So it was some good motivation as a child, but I really started enjoying it. So at like the age of 8, we started training for different things. His alma mater where he went to college, it's called Greenville College. They had a 5-mile race each year, and so I still remember like drawing out a training calendar with him and like writing down how much we would run each day. But it was just a fun way of like bonding with dad, but also kind of started my lifelong love for running.
Yeah, yeah. And now, when did you've run a couple of or a lot actually, a lot of half marathons and marathons. Did you get into that later or when you were younger
Yeah,
as well?
so I ran with my dad. My main childhood sport was soccer. But then in high school, I did run cross country for 2 years, and it was an interesting time because I was quite naturally gifted as a runner. I would say, not to brag or anything, but just I
Yeah.
worked hard, but I was pretty good at running, and so I was always like number 1 or 2 on the team. And I found that began to put a lot of pressure on me. Really, not so much from the coach or even my parents, but just myself. And so I I enjoyed the team aspect of cross country, but in the end, on race day, it's kind of all about how you perform individually as well. And so I just ended up feeling like, this is not fun anymore. This is too much pressure. And so after 2 years of high school cross country, I stepped away from running. I continued to play soccer. I went on to play soccer in college. But the interesting thing was when I started med school, the first 2 years are a lot of sitting in lecture halls, listening to lectures, and then going home and studying all day. So that was when I got back into running really for the enjoyment of it. Because after sitting all day and like using my brain to try to memorize all these facts, like running just became this release where I could just go and like kind of clear my mind. There was no pressure on me. So that is when I started training I ran 2 marathons in college. And um, it was really kind of a pleasant surprise of, oh, this can be fun again, because the pressure wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I've had several athletes tell me that, or they were runners in high school or college, but they stopped for long periods of time, like just didn't want to get back to it. And I think even put pressure on themselves when they got back to it, that they would have to be the athlete who they were at that time. And like, obviously we are now, 10, 20, 30 years later, things have changed. But yeah, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, but that's really interesting. Hmm. Now, how, um, tell us how running played into things when you were in the Army, where you have been running throughout this whole time.
Yeah, so as most people are probably familiar with, there are fitness tests in the Army to get in, but then every 6 months or so you have to run, right? It's changing, but still the 2 mile run is part of the fitness test. So I had to keep, in some level of shape to do okay with that. But really, where my running, the main time that I increased my mileage when I was in the Army was when I was deployed. So it's just a time where you have a lot more time on your hands. Like a lot of the responsibilities from back home are just suddenly out of the equation. My kids weren't there. I wasn't doing my normal job. And so I had a lot more time to run. This was my first deployment, which was in 2016. I went to Kuwait. And so, yeah, I started listening to audiobooks around that time. And so running became like my, again, just kind of way to relax, listen to my books. And I really wasn't planning to train for another marathon, but it was kind of like, got nothing better to do. Might as well increase my mileage. And like they had a gym where I was, so I would do like a few miles on the treadmill, then go outside. And it was just like extremely hot and dry. Um, so a lot of like breathing in sand, and that's why I did some of it inside. But
Yeah. Did you?
again,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
it was a way to relieve stress, and I didn't put a lot of pressure on myself. Like I said, I wasn't planning to train for something, and so it became a nice little like constructive thing to do during my deployment.
Yeah. Now, did you run the marathon there, or were you training for one back home?
I ended up running one back home. They were able to work out a really cool thing where they got permission from the Boston Marathon to run like a shadow race in Kuwait. It was going to be held after I was already gone, so I didn't do that one. But yeah, I did the Austin Marathon after I got home.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, do you feel, I mean, now when you're running, do you feel any sense of pressure, like especially when you're racing, to, get back and be the runner you remember from high school?
Yeah,
Or
definitely. I
yeah.
mean, I think we all have some level of like competitiveness, or like for me it's not even so much competing against other people as just like wanting to do my very best. But I think that's one, as I'm getting older, that's one actually really good thing that running has taught me, like that each run is different, like the weather conditions are different, the level of sleep you've had, like, and not to like necessarily expect the exact same results when you're working with different conditions each time. So that's something that I've struggled with, and why sometimes like it almost feels like, and I think for a lot of people, running is like this self-punishing thing, like, oh, I have to go out and, burn off those calories or whatever. But really, for it to be enjoyable, like there has to be a level of self-compassion and of like caring more about growth than about a given result and all that stuff. I'm sure you're familiar with all those things, but
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's it, that I'm trying to help people change their view about that, because that is the view of running. And a lot of people want to do it and say like, well, if I'm not running as hard as possible, if I'm not out there, running all speed work and hills and doing that all the time, then it's not worth it somehow. But when you realize that you can slow it down and enjoy it and still do what you want to do with the sport, it fits into your life better and you feel better.
yeah.
And it really increases longevity in the sport too. And as you said, as we get older, we have to be mindful about injuries. So yeah, totally agree. Now, how when it comes to your art, do you find some parallels while you're working on your art, and that feeling that you get with that as well as
Yes,
with running?
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think the first thing that springs to mind when you say that is, so my art is hand lettering based, so it's kind of like calligraphy, but kind of a looser, more artistic form of lettering. So, and I write a lot of like inspirational quotes, hopefully not like cheesy ones like the kitten that says hang in there or something, but like actual things that will inspire people, and reminders that I would want to have in my space, just to say like, you know, you're doing better than you think, or like remember these things when you're having a rough day. But all that to say, it can be really easy to be self-critical when I'm even in the process of lettering. Like, you know, you're trying to do something, you're like, oh, I totally messed up that letter, or like, this is not at all what I envisioned when I set out to do this. But it's kind of the same thing as with running. Like, if you're there like beating yourself up the whole time, then it's not going to be relaxing, and it's not going to be like, you will never get in the zone. Sometimes you just have to be like, hey, I'm here doing it, and I'm trying my best, and I'm going to celebrate that.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Well, do you have any races on your docket coming up?
I don't have any races coming up. Like I would like to do something again before too long. I'm just in a season of life where it's like I haven't been able to run as much as I would like to, but I
Yeah.
look forward to being able to again soon.
Yeah, but you know, the seasons they change, and that's part of the whole process too. Sometimes you need the rest and recovery for personal reasons, and sometimes life just gives you rest and recovery because you have to.
Exactly.
Well, tell us where we can find you and where we can find your art.
Yeah, my website is www.wordsofhopedesigns.com. And that has a link to my Etsy shop. That's probably the easiest way, rather than, but on Etsy, it's Words of Hope Art Shop. And then I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at Words of Hope Designs. So you can see kind of the stuff I'm working on. And also I have a blog kind of telling some of the stories behind some of the pieces, and just, yeah, a little more in-depth information behind for the reasons that I'm making the pieces that I am making.
It's beautiful. So everybody should go in and check it out. And I'm thinking about what I would want to have on my wall. Some
Yeah,
kind
well,
of
you know what? I haven't made it yet, but I have in my mind this one that says "Run your race."
yeah,
'Cause I
yeah.
would say that is a big take home that I learned in high school. Like, you don't necessarily have to run the same pace or the same strategy as the other people you're running with, you know? Like, you know your body, you know how you're feeling that day. Run your race, you know, because we're all at slightly different places and have different things that we're dealing with. So don't compare and despair, but just,
Yeah.
you know, keep on doing what you know you need to do.
Yeah, run your own race, run your race. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. Well, that sounds perfect, actually.
I'll start working on that for
All
you.
right, thank you. I feel like I have like a commission piece now. That's so amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for your service also. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I'll put all the links below so everybody can find you.
Thank you so much. It's great to talk with you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. If you liked it, please subscribe and share it with a friend. And if you are a newer runner or a runner who hasn't run in a while and you're looking to get back into the sport, you can find out how to work with me over on my website, which is mindful-marathon.com. See you on the next episode.